Hey guys, in this video, you're going to learn how to land a relevant finance internship that you can use to break into jobs like investment banking and private equity in less than a month. Getting that first internship is usually one of the most difficult parts of capital markets or high finance recruiting. But once it is secured, you comfortably move on to bigger and better internships, the ones that you really want. I gave the presentation that you're about to see back in January of this year, 2024. But what we discussed can be applied to recruiting in 2025, 2026, and well beyond that. And to ensure that you retain as much of this discussion as possible, I highly recommend that you watch the presentation in full with a pen and paper at the ready. Now, in the first 12 minutes, I go over what it takes to break into investment banking, the types of internships that you need to get, the methods for getting one, and reasons why these conventional methods, the ones that you've heard from your peers, parents, professors, or career center personnel, often aren't effective enough to land the right internship, crucially, at the right time. I discuss how this can be addressed through the use of internships at boutique firms and why the best students, the ones who make it to the top firms, or for those in Canada, to the US, tend to have multiple of them. With how accelerated recruiting is nowadays, summer investment banking analyst internship postings coming out over a year before the actual internship, it's very important you understand at the outset of your recruitment journey the exact resume or candidate profile you're aiming for by the time that you apply. Now, I then show you exactly how these boutique internships can be used to speed up your recruitment process using the example of a university student at the very start of his second year. No, this section is very helpful for those currently in unorthodox recruitment positions, those who started late or are switching industries. But I then go into what a professional resume looks like for those in investment banking or private equity, what the resumes of students who have broken in look like at the time of their breaking in, and what your resume should look like when you're going through that process as well. After that, I walk you through the process of landing these roles, how to find them, who to reach out to, what to say when you reach out, what the interview process is like for these firms, the interview questions that they commonly ask, how long it usually takes to hear back from them, and what you should be doing right now to land them. Now, at the end of the presentation, there's also a short 5-minute Q&A going over a few questions from the audience. But in the spirit of brevity, I won't drone on any longer. However, I did want to mention that if you are interested in joining my coaching program, there's a link in the description that you can use to learn more about it. And if you're interested in seeing more of my content, do check out the other videos on this channel or on my LinkedIn profile, also down below. Okay, I'll get out of your way now. Enjoy the video and happy recruiting. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you guys taking the time on a Friday. I know you guys probably have other things to be doing, so I do appreciate it. But yeah, no, throughout this presentation, we're going to be going over just like how to land, an internship for the summer, one that's relevant, one that actually is additive to your resume, to your candidacy, and that can amount to the ultimate summer internship in investment banking, private equity, whatever it might be, those competitive positions. So this is the agenda for the call. We're just going to quick introduction about myself, as well as sort of what we're going to go over, what you guys might get at the end of this presentation, and then we'll get into the actual process of landing it. Cool. All right. So yeah, like I said, I really do appreciate it. I know that exams and recruiting and all that stuff's going on. So yeah, it's good to see all of you guys. And some of you may know me, some of you don't. I see some people that I know in the audience, but for those who don't, I'm Matthew. I'm a fourth year student at UBC. I grew up in Singapore. I'm half Canadian, half Singaporean. And most recently did a summer internship with Moelis in their LA office for investment banking. But yeah, throughout university, that was really all that I spent my time on, all that I focused on was recruiting. And then ultimately decided to do entrepreneurship. And now, I run a coaching business, a career consultancy, helping students like many of you break into the competitive positions that I had a lot of difficulty breaking into, struggled a lot too. In my first year especially, sent out probably like 300, 400, 500 applications, nothing back. I think the 2 interviews I got were both pre-recorded high reviews. So there you go. They didn't actually amount to anything. But the first internship I got in private equity, that was through cold outreach. So the subject of this presentation, the ones in second year were also through that. So that corporate development internship, I was actually in their accounting department at first, and then I networked my way onto their corporate development team, and then continued working there part-time into my second year. For Viva Partners, search fund, private equity, Everyone loves technically it's private equity. But certainly for EY, that was a lot of networking too. It wasn't through the conventional process that I had networked with the judges from a case competition, and then finally got an interview with one of their teams. And then yeah, BCI, Moelis, that was sort of through the conventional methods. Certainly there was a lot of networking, but these are the internships that a lot of us are working towards, right? Anyway, I hope that sort of level sets everyone in my background, and sort of, I say this not to toot my own horn, but to help you guys understand that I've been through the process, I've been through the things I'm about to talk about, and certainly we're in a very, very similar position to many of you, very, very recently. So if you guys do stay till the end, note that these are the things that you'll get. So, resumes, templates, the contact list, stuff that pertains to what we're talking about today, guides. So just little bonuses for you guys taking the time, because I do really respect it and do really appreciate you guys for coming. And yeah, these are the ones that pertain to the things today, and certainly will be like a core part of the process I'm about to lay out. Anyways, let's get into it. So before I get into the actual process of like how we land the internship, I want to level set everyone on like why we're all trying so hard, why there's such a rush, why there's this random dude on the internet running a business helping students get in to these competitive positions. So like why are we trying so hard? And I think the context that would be most useful is to understand how competitive these positions are, right? Which requires a high amount of preparation. I mean, these are exceptional jobs that pay six figures, sometimes for some of them over $200,000, not just like in the $100,000 range. And so it makes sense then that you do have to do a lot of preparation far in advance of the actual recruitment process, which itself happens far before the actual internship date. But I think all of us here are certainly working towards a optimal candidate profile by the time recruitment starts for these summer internships, right? Certainly processes are going on right now for the summer internships. I think the buy side in the US has kicked off. We're just waiting for the first round of interviews for the sell side. But what we're optimizing for then is our profile, our candidate profile. And really that boils down to how our resume looks, right? By the time it comes to start networking and applying for those positions. And the quality of our resume, how good it looks, how good people think we are based on our resume, is determined by our experience, both extracurricular and work, but certainly the latter is held in much higher regard, and determined largely by the relevance of our experiences and the volume. Relevance is a little bit more important, but the reason why these determine our candidacy is because they're emblematic of how long we've been committed to these careers, to chasing these careers, to pursuing them, but also how we work, and to some extent, the skill set that we'll build. And so more experiences would be this kid's more dedicated, this student probably worked harder, better impression of us, and therefore higher probability of getting the interview invite. Now, more relevant experiences, even more dedication, a relevant skill set, worked even harder, even better potential employee, right? And I'm sure you guys have looked at LinkedIn profiles like, wow, how did this student get this internship with this position? And you're probably thinking, oh, there was like some secret they did. You probably worked really hard. And it's exactly the same when bankers or recruiters look at your resume. And so in finding these experiences, then there is a hierarchy to them, like what's better and what's not. And the ones at the top for both of these columns are the ones that we're working towards. So we can't really be working them before we get to them. But I hope this helps you guys understand, like sort of the internships that could possibly help you in getting the summer internship that you want. Now, the problem though with a lot of these internships is that they're highly competitive. They are looking mainly for third and fourth year students, which I would bet all of you have ignored and applied to them. Same here. We've all done that, but they're highly accessible, and honestly, like sometimes they're the positions that people have been working towards for the 3 years, for the 2 years of a university. So it would make sense then that like, yeah, we can't get them as our first experience, which I think is the main problem, right? How do we get that first experience? the one that cements anyone who looks at our resumes mind that we are dedicated to this career. And so in applying to these continually, it sucks, right? Like you just keep getting rejected, you just getting ghosted. You think you're doing something wrong, but in reality, you're not. Well, maybe some of you are, but oftentimes it's just like you're applying to the wrong jobs, and that wastes a lot of time. It's not really good in the mind, and there's certainly a lot of stress as well. And eventually, we just settle for the internship that we didn't want. We settle for an internship that isn't relevant to the role that we truly want, that we've been working towards for a while, that we dream of. And we take it thinking that it'll help us, thinking that, okay, A experience is better than no experience. And you're right, but like we said before, the relevance of the experience is also a big factor, and in fact, more important than just having 2 experiences. Like a student with 4 marketing internships, when they apply to these summer internships, they're going to do a lot worse than a second-year student with 2 highly relevant finance internships. And yes, okay, marketing is not the greatest example, but like 4 accounting internships, or let's say 3 accounting internships and 1 finance internship. The guy with 2 internships in finance is probably going to do better. So when we settle for these internships, we waste time. And the reason why we waste time is because the internship isn't actually adding to our resume, to our candidacy. And because there's a limited amount of time we have in university, we need to make every single internship term count. And that's another problem. The fact that we need to wait for an internship term to get an internship. And so the opportunity cost of taking an irrelevant internship is so high. And if you aren't getting the internships that actually are relevant, that actually add to your resume, you're falling behind. Because, like I said, the opportunity cost of it was the other relevant internship. And because these jobs are 3 years out if you're in first year, and we're working towards them, and other students, such as myself, such as other first year students, your peers, having worked towards them for a while, if you're not stacking these internships on top of each other, getting better with every internship, you're wasting time. And it's important to understand that it's not a set number of internships or a set sort of amount of relevance that exists that we're evaluated against. We're evaluated against our peers, the competition, the other people applying. And so it's not if you have enough experience, it's whether do you have more than other people. So I think that's helpful in understanding like who you're up against and how to look at your own recruitment process when it comes to high finance, that it's a competition at the end of the day. And so some of you may have heard that first year internships don't matter, that bankers, recruiters, when you're applying for these 30-year summer internships, they don't look at your first year internship. That's correct, but I think it forgets that the internship you had in second year that these people are looking at, the people who evaluated you at that point were looking at your first year internship. So if any of you are in first year, or if any of you are in 5 years and just switched in second year now, like know that every single internship, if you want to get an investment banking or private equity, counts. Every single term counts. And so you want to be building on top of it. I keep saying this, but it's just so important. And so to understand then, like, okay, what is the threshold that I have to meet? What amount of internships, what type of internships can I be confident will get me into investment banking or private equity? And the best way to find that is to look at other students. Look at other students in the roles that you dream of. Look at upper year students and understand, okay, like this was their internship track record, and this is where I am, and so these are the ones I need to get. And I know probably all of you have done that, and that's probably why you guys are here today. So these are some of the internships that, if we go back to this, that aren't investment banking, aren't private equity, right? Because these are the ones we're working towards. So they are relevant and will help us, and they are good, but they're typically not accessible to us, right? Certainly first and second year students, and certainly students without prior relevant experience, which is pretty much all first year students, like we can't get to these. Like a Deloitte M&A Advisory, none of us are going to get if we don't have prior relevant experience. Even if you're in your third year and you have no relevant, even if you're in your third year, if you don't have relevant experience, you're not going to be in any of those positions or get any of those positions. So what does that leave us with, right? Well, accounting and finance at the bottom, but they don't really help. So that leaves us with these. And I know many of you have probably seen these before. Some of you may even have them yourself, right? But I think a lot of that has just come from like seeing, oh, search fund, search fund, search fund. You hear people talking about it. I've talked about it certainly on LinkedIn, but in understanding what the true benefits of them are, how to actually extract the maximum amount of value from these internships is something that we'll go over today. Because many students will have these internships, will get them, and we'll go over the easiest way to get them shortly. And I'll give you all the resources required to do that. But there are 2 steps in the process. They're getting the internship, okay, cool, search fund, boutique investment bank, great, which in and of itself is something that takes some time. Certainly less than 2 weeks though, for those of you who are motivated. But the other part of that is also how you present it on your resume and how you talk about it. And so the real benefits of these internships are that they are highly relevant, right? As implied by this hierarchy, they're highly relevant. You can do them part-time. Yes, most of them are unpaid. But the important thing about them being part-time is that, well, first, you don't need to say it's part-time on your resume to the extent that that undermines the credibility of the internship. But the good thing is, remember, we were talking about the opportunity cost of taking an irrelevant internship earlier. That doesn't exist with these because you can do them right now. If any of you use the steps I'm about to lay out today, over the next week, you can get that internship. Seriously. And so it improves your resume so fast. Instead of having to wait 4 months for a new internship to come, you can just get it now. And so it allows you to then speed up significantly the time it takes to meet that threshold of experience that we were talking about, such that, and truthfully, roles that you couldn't apply to 2 weeks ago when you didn't have this stuff, you can apply to now with confidence. So that's sort of the true benefits of them. And for those who are looking for like off-cycle roles, maybe you're a bit later in your school year, and so you can't do the whole like summer internship process because that requires like basically, you need to be 2 years out from graduation because it's the next summer and then you can't graduate before that. Very few off-cycle roles are highly relevant, right? And so if you're working towards those off-cycle roles to hopefully then either leverage that to convert to a full-time offer or then re-recruit full-time with that, highly relevant internship in hand, the unfortunate thing is that there are so few of them, it's just so competitive. And so like if you're applying to an off-cycle investment banking position, you are going to be competing against people with investment banking internships already. And so the reason I say that is just because if you're looking at those internships, you want to be able to improve your resume super duper fast, which these do. And again, it's not just getting them, it's also how you talk about them, how you present them on the resume. And that comes down to the deal experience at the bottom, which we'll touch on in a second. But just to put into perspective the immediacy of the improvements that these internships provide, let's look at Joe. So if we roll back the clock 5 months and we're at the start of the current university year, so it's September, right? He has no work experience, no extracurricular experience, and he just decided he wanted to do investment banking. Wow. Now, the typical thing is to just start with extracurriculars, right? Low-hanging fruit. Okay, he does that, right? And as you can see, and certainly the thing that's happening right now, because we're in that fall term, the penultimate summer internship recruitment cycle, right? And as we said, the goal of getting all these internships is to maximize and optimize our profile by the time that recruitment cycle starts. Now, he can't participate. He doesn't meet the threshold. So instead, you just have to land like another summer internship. And this time it's irrelevant because he's failing all these applications. The ones that are relevant are too competitive. He doesn't have the relevant experience to justify that, okay? So then by the time third year starts, he does an internship during the summer that doesn't actually want to be in, that's irrelevant, okay? And he's barely changed his candidacy. And if he still wanted to do 4 years of university and still get into investment banking, that is highly, highly, highly improbable, right? Because the only other option he has is off cycles, but he doesn't have enough experience to get that. And if you do an off cycle, then you're going to go through the full-time recruitment cycle, which is a bit more of a black box. And certainly like I might do a webinar on that in the future, but he would need to extend his graduation. So there's another way of doing things, right? The smart way. Okay, same situation. Joe's at the start of second year, no experience, no relevant experience. What does he do? He lands a search fund or boutique investment bank for the winter and fall terms. He does the same extracurriculars as he did before, and he lands a boutique investment bank or search fund for the summer as well. And the fact that I've shifted him like sort of all the way and like he immediately got 2 jobs, I guess it implies that yes, landing these aren't too difficult. But the important point is that he has improved his resume to the point where he is fully able to participate in the summer internship recruiting cycle for investment banking or private equity in literally 4 months. So he goes through the cycle, right? And he gets an interview. He's prepped, he's stressed, okay, cool. And then he lands it, and now he's happy Joe. So even if you start at the beginning of second year with no relevant experience, or really any year at all, if you do this and do it right, and yes, there are a lot of things that I'm sort of omitting here, all the studying when it comes to interviews, all the networking you have to do for both the internships that he's getting in those terms, as well as for the penultimate summer internship recruitment cycle. But I think this helps bring home the agility that these internships provide. So you can really get around these conventional wait times of like normal internships, right? Can make up for lost time, and certainly for third and fourth year students with limited internship turns left, right? Right now, the option that you're probably looking at is, well, I'm gonna have to settle for something I don't want. I'm gonna have to get this sort of internship that I really didn't dream of, and then hopefully full-time recruit for something that is okay. But by using these internships, you can gain enough experience to get the threshold to be able to compete for the position that you actually want. And if you study hard enough, network hard enough, and do all the things that are required, you can get it. A role that pays well, that you'd be happy with a full-time role for, right? And something that certainly can be leveraged to get maybe into your actual dream role in the future, right? Going from an accounting position or like those finance interns postings, yeah, that's just accounting stuff. But doing that full time and then going to investment banking lateraling, yeah, that's going to take probably like 5 years. But at least if you start out with like an EY transaction advisory role, the lateral probably can happen within 2 years. So the other reason why these internships are so good, and really what makes them relevant, is the deal experience. And that in the world of M&A, in the world of investment banking, private equity, the capital markets, is your currency, is what people use to convey their credibility, right? You've probably seen on LinkedIn some directors or like some sort of senior people in investment banking or private equity list all the deals, the transaction experience, right? It's like, why do they do that? Why do they put that on LinkedIn? It's like, because in that world, like that's what you're valued on. That's what people use to check how good you are. And so that, in the context of search fund investment banking, of boutique investment banking internships, comes down to how you present it on your resume, which is what we're going to go into. So I'm going to show you a couple of resumes from people on Wall Street, right? The jobs that all of us want in investment banking. And as you can see, if you take away the name and then the education section, because for professionals, it's at the bottom of the resume, like the transaction experience comprises near 75% of the actual space allocated to work experience. Same thing for this analyst at Lazard. Same thing for this analyst at Citigroup. It is a huge part of the resume and a huge part of their candidacy when they're trying to lateral to private equity. Now, this is my resume when I was, the one at the bottom is when I was applying to like investment banking, going through that recruitment cycle for the US, just to show you that there's an alternative way of listing these experiences, but I still sort of pique their interest and draw their attention to it just by using like sort of the numbers, right? 600 million, like someone's going to look at that. But then at the top, you can see that that's sort of done for BCI, like how I present it. Of course, now that I run this business, that doesn't really matter. But yeah, I just hope that gives you sort of an understanding of how these can be presented. And this is just another student's resume that I've taken a snippet of. So yeah, there are a few ways to present them, but the important thing is that they are highlighted on the resume. And the goal of this is getting asked about that. So when you're in these internships, Yeah, there are certain parts that are boring, as with any job. I think all of you have probably experienced that. There are fun parts and there are not so fun parts of of, of jobs. But the best part of these internships and the ones that really matter, the ones that you should pay attention to is work on deals. Whether you're on the buy or sell side, from taking investment bank, the deal work that you do is something that you should really try hard to, one, get more access to and get more time on, but two, like really study and understand. Sims are really popular for that. In investment banks, you'll be making them. At search funds, you'll be looking at them. But yeah, anything else, analyses you do, write-ups, all that, please do store them if you're at these internships so that you can study for the deals in the future, which we'll get into in a second. But for example, one of my resume for this LBO model build, this shoe retailer, right? This is the sim that I use, and certainly like I use that to study for my interviews for the investment banking recruitment cycle based on these resume entries. And I can tell you every interview that I was in, I was asked about the deals that were on my resume. Now, in terms of like how they're asked, and just so you can understand, when you do get these internships, how do I present it on my resume? Like I will say, do try your best to embellish. Do be really bold with what you say you've done. Like if you've done only a sixth of a project, a workflow, like I would say that you've done it or mention it, right? Don't be afraid. You can study for all of this on the back end. But know that when they ask you about these deals, they're going to just ask it sort of from a more general perspective than they will be very specific. Like, oh, can you tell me about these expansion opportunities, as you guys can see in the entry? But even if they do, like to actually explain that, to actually bring the point home and impress them with your answer, which is the goal, you still need to provide context about the entire deal, right? And they also want to hear that you understand the deal because that's what a good intern would do, right? You wouldn't just restrict yourself to only the workflows you're allocated to, right? You want to go above and beyond. And so you want to understand the whole deal. And so you also want to convey that in the interview when you are asked, or on coffee chats when you are asked, which does happen. And so it brings us back to just telling them, and we're certainly studying as if you're going to tell them about the entire deal. Now, in terms of studying that, and one of the things they'll be giving away at the end of this, like there's a full guide on how to tell people about the deals that you do work on. But this is just sort of a quick breakdown of like just some points to remember. But the most important thing, and where students often falter, is in the structure and clarity that they have in their delivery. A lot of them will either only be able to talk about the things that they worked on, which certainly is not impressive, or when it comes to explaining the deal from A to Z, it's just super messy, and it's more like Z to M to Y to B, if you guys get what I mean. And I will say that, yes, to explain an entire deal, a very complex process, in 2 minutes is difficult. So to show them that you can go deeper and you can go further and that you do understand this at a deeper level than perhaps what your answer would suggest, I'd be happy to talk about this further. I'd be happy to go deeper into this. I'd be happy to talk more about it, right? That can be strategically used, and honestly, that can be strategically used throughout any of your interview answers, your stock pitches, your whatever, all that stuff that perhaps you could go on for 10 minutes about would be important. Now, yeah, like I said, yeah, the guide will be released based on that. But here's just sort of like examples of how to prep for these interviews, and when you are asked about it. This is sort of an example to just show you like the sort of level of depth and granularity that you should have and the thoroughness that you should use when you go through and study for these entries. This is sort of another one that's more of an investment banking focused one. But yeah, I would also suggest rebuilding your models too. And I would show you, but we're sort of like running out of time here. So I'll just get to the actual process, what you guys have been waiting for of getting these internships. So before we reach out, before we network, before we do anything, we want to make sure that we have 3 things. Your resume has to be good, as you guys all know. Your outreach email, and yes, we will be using email, and your contact list. And these really are like the essentials to any networking effort, or certainly any like job application that you're taking seriously in finance, because networking would be a core part of that. anyways. Now, to just focus on the resume, like you guys have probably heard this before, like, yeah, like make sure it's, formatted, spelling, grammar, all that, right? It's for all job applications. But just because obviously I have students in my program and they had probably all heard it before they came to me, but many of them still sort of didn't have the resume that would be required or that would convey the level of professionalism or candidacy that you would need to get these internships. And so I hope these two examples and the one that follows gives you an idea of, okay, this is what my resume needs to look like. Like, yeah, the one on the left, like, it was properly formatted, like, wasn't ugly or anything, but it just sort of misses the point when it comes to finance resumes. And I will say that finance resumes are probably the most boring of the lot. Tech resumes seem to be like a lot more diversified and a lot more sort of like creative. But like you should just follow a very simple, very easy to read, very intuitive form when it comes to your resume. And so this is another one. Okay, the one on the left is pretty bad. I hope none of you have that. But if you do, just know that these resume transformations, as well as my own template, I'll be giving away at the end. So do stay till the end if you want that. Now, so that's the resume. Just make sure it's good, right? You guys probably all heard that before. Now the next is your email. So professional, direct, error-free, classic stuff. And so here's an example of an outreach email that I would send to a search runner boutique investment bank, right? And don't worry, the template will be provided after this as well. So you guys don't need to like copy this down or anything. But as you can see, it's probably different from the emails that you guys are sending. One thing I often see is like blocks of text, right? Use paragraphing thoughtfully, like especially when a person's reading it on their phone, just doesn't really work. It's just not fun to do. And that leads to the next one, which is like if you want to be fully certain that they answer your questions and that they understand and read everything that you're saying, like make the ask distinct. So you'll see here the question, the only question that I'm asking like throughout this is its own paragraph. So just do that and it just ensures clarity. And the last is like a lot of people will offer like to work around the other person's schedule, and that's what I did too. I only learned later on that offering my own availability would also be helpful because like some people just don't want to do the mental gymnastics of like thinking about when they're going to be free or certainly like don't have the foresight into next week to know. So just make sure that these three things are all there and you will differentiate your email. And yes, I know maybe it seems a bit ridiculous to think that your candidacy comes down to an email, but everything in finance, everything in this job application, this recruitment process, everything comes down to first impressions. And so if you're emailing a person for the first time, that is their only perception of you. Now, of course, you'll attach your resume too, but just know that that's why it's important. Like all your candidacy is based on their first impression of you. So you want to optimize it. Now, to get the contacts that we need, typically, because we'll be looking at sort of like these smaller firms and stuff, we look at online business directories, right? Ones that group a particular set of firms together. Axial is the one that I use. And don't worry, the contact list right at the end will have over 1,000 of them. That is more than enough for all 30 of you to get internships. But LinkedIn profiles are also helpful, especially because they validate a firm, as in like if you see them and they worked in it, they're saying like, okay, that this firm takes people without relevant experience. So they serve as very good precedents for your own recruitment. Job boards are also helpful. Search Funder is one that does search funds specifically, as the name suggests. But know that these ones, since they are more accessible, they're going to be more competitive than what you would face if you were just directly reaching out to the firms themselves. And then corporate websites, like yeah, that's helpful, but we got to find the firm first, right? So now, when it comes to actually like grabbing the contacts and all that stuff, when you've had all the firms and everything, in terms of who to reach out to, like senior employees is completely fine. The founder, the CEO, principal, just the top dog, right? Because they don't have HR, the seniors are involved, and so you're fine to reach out to them as opposed to the typical advice like, yeah, analysts and associates are the ones you want to reach out to. So that's what you do. And then, yeah, you just go to the website, grab the contact information. And this really applies to like networking in general. Like it always takes longer than you think. And so when you guys do this yourselves, like just know that it will take longer. Now I'll show you a quick example of grabbing contact information. Actually, no, let me know if you guys want me to do that. I just want to make sure we get through the whole thing because we are running out of time. But yeah, we'll have an open Q&A at the end. So if you guys want me to, I can do that. But in terms of reaching out, right? Because we're gonna have the resume, we have our email, and we have our list. Okay. And as I said, there's gonna be over 1,000 of these. So okay, how do we actually, how do we not press send 1,000 times? Like I would suggest getting an email automator. Like it's literally like $13 for like a month. And like I said, you guys will get this in like 2 weeks. So I mean, it's well worth the effort, or well worth the money, sorry, to get it. And you know, this point on like reducing time and effort is also why we're not gonna do LinkedIn outreach to these firms, because LinkedIn is just clunky. It takes longer. And this applies to like normal networking too. Like email is just better on multiple levels, right? Your limited profile people views, the character count constraint. If you're doing connection notes, it's like you can't attach your resume either, so you can't provide context to your background, and you're just hoping that they're online, that they aren't getting like bombarded with requests and all that. So that makes sense. There you go. Thank you, Jake. Yeah. So, sorry. Okay. So before we reach out, we have all these. Cool. Now, after you reach out, after you send the emails, expect cold replies, as in people like just sort of replying rudely, like, "Oh, I've had so many of these emails come in. Like, you know, are you serious about this? Like, stop sending me emails, stuff like that." It's fine. Just think about them, guys. There's no repercussions to this. You're never gonna go like hear from them again. They're working at their own boutique investment banker search firm, which is not the firms that you want to go full time in. And by the time you're like 30 years old and like you have a network and like you're never going to see these guys again. They're going to forget the email that you sent to me. So don't worry if you get those rude replies. Just throw them in the trash or ignore them. Do expect no replies. I'd say around a 1 to 5% response rate is fair. And for those that are interested in taking you, but for those that are interested in taking you, sometimes they do give you an assessment either pre or post interview. So just something to note going through the process. But really, the majority of the time, because you will be asking for a call, like that you will schedule a call, and and that serves as the interview. So don't actually think that it's just a normal call. Like it is an interview. And yeah, it will be the thing that leads to the offer. So sorry. So when you do hop on these calls, the other person will take control. So it's not like, you know, it's not like a coffee chat or anything. But just based on my own students as well as my own experience, I'm probably on like 15 students to get internships through this method. And this just seems to be the general pool of questions that are asked. You guys have probably all seen this before. These are certainly, most of them are in the behavioral guide that I will provide after this. In fact, I think all except what do you enjoy doing in your free time and what do you know about the search fund model and like what have you enjoyed about university so far? I mean, the search fund model and like what do you think we do here? It's the answers are all online. Like what do investor bankers do and okay, what is the search fund model? So yeah, those are super easy to answer. The other ones are all in the guide, so don't worry about that. But overall, don't be concerned. The interview is highly conversational and non-technical. So you don't need to like prep like as you would for, you know, an actual investment banking interview. It's pretty chill. Yeah, and as I said, these are the ones that are in the behavioral guide with model answers and everything like that. So after you reach out, right, prepare for that 1 to 5% response rate, get those answers down, complete the interview, and then you get the offer. And that's really the process. And yeah, based on my own students' experience as well as mine, the average time to offer is about 2 weeks. If let's say we start today, actually I wouldn't email on a Friday. So probably start Monday using the contact list I'll provide as well as the email templates. And if you do get that email automator or the one that Jake suggested in this chat, like if you email 500 of them, because there's about 1,200 in the list, I'm almost certain you'll have calls for that week scheduled. So I hope that assuages any worries on your guys' end. But yeah, that's sort of the process. And just to recap, to bring back home sort of the key points here, right? Why are we doing this? Highly competitive jobs, highly paid, and preparation starts years in advance. And we're optimizing for, at that point, the look of our resume, how many experiences we have, how many relevant experiences we have, And the more relevant those experiences are, the more experiences there are on our resume, the higher our probability of getting that first round interview. And the reason why I say first round interview as opposed to offer is because once you get to the first round, you're pretty much evaluated on a blank slate. So you're all on a level playing field, you and the other interviewees. So hierarchy of finance internships, right? And don't worry, the deck will be in the sort of like Google Drive folder I'll share with all of you after this. But just remember, these are sort of the ones, and Boutique IB search funds are literally the most relevant you can get to investment banking or to private equity and investment banking respectively without doing investment banking or private equity, because they are literally just investment banking and private equity on a smaller scale. So, right, deal experience and the immediacy of the internships is really, their sort of true value. And we want to make sure that the deal experience is presented properly on our resume so that we actually extract the value from the internship. We do, as well as the learning you'll have on the job. But the sort of deal experience on the resume is what a lot of students miss and why they maybe feel dissatisfied with these internships, because they didn't do that, because it didn't serve them the way they thought it would. Now, I think just overall, in terms of the mindset to use when you do approach recruitment, what I think the pushback against these internships is that they're unpaid, but it's like, dude, you're working towards a job that'll literally pay you like over 150 grand out of undergrad, what, as a 22-year-old. And yeah, to some extent, you are taking a risk. You're losing intern wages though for 4 months. It's not that much. And so if you're willing to forego those wages, your odds of breaking in increase so much. So I think just using that mindset of learning over earning will help you maybe get more comfortable with these internships. And certainly, if you do get into investment banking, you'll recoup your losses just over the internship, and then literally you earn $12,000 in your first month out of school. So I thought it was a small cost to pay. I would also say that, it's basically a part-time job, especially when you're taking it really seriously and you're working towards those penultimate, the people who are recruiting right now. Many of my students, certainly the ones going to the US, it is a ton of networking and a ton of prep. So it's so valuable to stay organized, to understand, okay, these are the things I haven't done, these are the things I still need to do, right? These are the interviews I need to get, these are the questions I need to say, the topics, all that. So staying really organized will help. Using other students, other successful students, the ones who are in the roles that you want, perhaps even further, as reference points to understand what you must do. And certainly networking with them and asking them what they did or what they think you should do is also helpful. But it is a multi-year process, right? Joe, that we showed earlier, Joe's an anomaly. Joe is sick. Now you can do that, but it will be stressful, right? So for those of you who do have maybe a bit longer, and so it is a multi-year process, just be patient, right? This will all amount to something good. And at the end of the day, you're learning and you're the one who's improving. So, and I think lastly, it's just for similar reasons to why that email was so important, your introduction needs to be really important. If you think about it, everyone who serves as a decision maker throughout your recruitment process, all the ones that could possibly give you an internship or give you an interview, they're meeting you for the first time. And if we assume that first impressions then are largely predicated on the way you introduce yourself, then it's impossible to understate the significance of introducing yourself properly. It needs to convey your candidacy, to hype you up. It needs to give sufficient background about you to understand how you got to where you are today, but also convey why you're talking to this person and what you want perhaps out of this internship or out of this networking call. And doing all those three things, trying to wing it, having never thought about the formation of your introduction, is a dangerous game to play. And so I would say give a lot of thought and put a lot of time into developing your introduction, because it will pay, you will reap the rewards of it if you do. So when you get this summer internship, that's not it, right? There's that whole other process that we're working towards that you still need to ace. And it's a whole different ballgame, right? You need to prepare on a technical level, on a behavioral level, as well as market-based questions, right? You need to network your life depends on it. Certainly if you want to go to the US, you actually need to sell yourself now. You aren't just press and send an email automator to get an interview. It's you have to go out and pound the pavement and get people, you turn them from strangers into advocates in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's not easy. And you're not the only one they're listening to. They're listening to 100 other students too. So yeah, it's a different ballgame. It's incredibly hard. And that's why less than 5% of applicants get the first round and less than 1% get an offer. And that's just how it works, right? And for all of you today, I do hope you break in if that is your goal. But on the balance of probabilities, not all of you will do it. And so to put it into context, like Moelis, so HR told us this during the internship, 4,000 over applicants, and they took 70 undergraduate interns. That's less than 1%. So the only question I sort of have is like, do you think you can beat 99% of your peers? Sorry. That really is the game you're playing. And so are there any parts of the presentation you guys would like me to go over again? I know I talk fast sometimes. Oh, grabbing contact information? For sure. Yeah, no problem. Give me 1 second. This is the Excel file that will be in that Google Drive folder. But here we'll go with the business directory example. So like Axial, and a lot of this are pulled from Axial. So like, don't worry, like these all match up. But I would do like Axial, do search funds, right? Bang, like okay. And this is just a general business directory. So really, it's just a matter of okay, can I get the firm website once I know it's a search fund? So that's why the directory is important because it groups all of them together. So then you just go here and then okay, quickly contact us. Typically, okay, they have that, but typically they'll have the contact information of the people that are relevant, of the team and all that. So literally just grab their emails and then pop it into a Gmail, and then that would be your thing. So that's how you would grab in usually. Now I'll show you like LinkedIn really quick. So I have mine sort of set up here. And this is what I meant by like precedence. As you can see, like I did this in second year. So you could click on someone's, the firm in their experience and just literally either do that or you can find the people. But a lot of people don't have their email on LinkedIn. So I just go to the site and then our team is always the one to go to first. And yeah, usually it's either an email icon or their email itself, and this will open Outlook. And then it's just a matter of like, okay, you just grab the, yeah, here we go, Camilla. Yeah, so that would be how you do it usually. And if you guys see here, like that's essentially what's been done. Like for all of these, they just grab their emails and then you would just pop these into, whatever format your email automator wants or needs. This would be the way that it's done. And yeah. Does that clear everything up? Cool. No problem, Ethan. No problem, Jack. Yeah, I don't know why I can't see the questions on the Menti. Give me 1 second. Touch on the. Okay, I'll check the Menti in a second, and I'll stay on longer. I'll stay on like 5 minutes after if you guys, just so we can get all the questions. How our introductions look like. So yeah, there's a guide on it in the drive link that they'll send you. But I would say like think about it. And this is in the guide too. But the favorite thing I like to use is and my introduction as well as other students are all there too. So you'll have the exact like script written out. But I would always think of it as like, okay, well, I'm pitching myself to a professional. So all the pros that I talk about should be like oriented towards that. Contrast that with, let's say you're talking to a girl or guy that you like, right? You're thinking about everything you're saying from the perspective of like what will elicit their favor or like what will get them to like me, right? And so when you do that, you'll think about, okay, well, like examples to use. You'll think about embellishing your own achievements or your hobbies, whatever that is, and then sort of like pitching yourself like that. And so I would just say do that in more of a professional context. So like, what are the character traits that I want to convey? Right, hardworking, diligent, persistent, good teamwork. So then try and weave that into the things you say without explicitly saying it. Right. So like I played varsity basketball. It's like, okay, that already conveys a whole host of qualities, right? You're good at working a team, you're hardworking, all that. So do that throughout your teammate, and then list your experiences and do a bit of elaboration. But there should always be an intention behind them in terms of like why you did this, and the explanation for it should be like implicit in your intro. But yeah, the guide does a lot better of a job of explaining it. So some good extracurriculars break in as well, whether it be clubs. So I wouldn't say certifications are helpful, just because like it's probably like a work experience is held in much higher regard than it. And a certification, because they're all largely for completion, bar like the CFA, which take an excessive amount of time away from recruitment. So if any of you are considering doing the CFA, thinking that it'll help you move forward with private equity or investment recruiting, don't. The process I just laid out will help even more. And the CFA costs money and time. And it does not move the needle when it comes to your candidacy. Now, extracurriculars, to break into, just look at your student clubs at school. And there's like a premier one, there's probably like a few other ones. But the other thing you can do is think about like, and one of the examples on the resumes that are in the folder that I'll send you, you'll see like Turkish Equity Research Association. I'll share it on the PowerPoint really quick. So this is something that I did for one of my students. If you look here, like Turkish Equity Research Association, Pharmaceutical Industry Analyst Project, right? As well as like the Wall Street Prep Bootcamp. Okay, like yeah, I made the modeling course into its own entry for him, but like you can see his Warren Buffett's resume on the left, right? Like, yeah, it's not great. It's not going to get you a job. And it's like, well, how do I improve my resume, make it more relevant, make it more voluminous with where I am and with what I have? It's like, okay, well, do you know how to pitch a stock? Can you pitch a stock? Yes. Okay, cool. Let's make, like, say you made your own student club. Cool. Let's do it. And then you just have your stock pitches there. And again, that serves like a deal experience for it. It draws the other person's attention to it. And you can see that we also use work and extracurricular experience. And that's so we can put the extracurriculars at the top, the ones that are most relevant. And I will also say that you can order your resume in order of relevance as opposed to chronology, to make sure that the people who look at it see that you have relevant experience. So I hope that helps, Ethan. Yeah, of course. Okay, well, I will also post the link to the recording, everyone, but I do appreciate all of you coming. I really do. What about corporate banking? I mean, it's okay. Like, corporate banking is it's far less competitive, Mohammed. So you wouldn't need the same amount of like internships as you would investment banking. And again, the best way to find what the threshold to meet is to look at other students who broke into corporate banking and see what they have. So like find like the median candidate who breaks into corporate banking and use that as a reference point. Yeah, no problem, Nathan. Anyways, thank you guys all for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys got value out of this. And yeah, I hope you guys all managed to break in. Have a good weekend, guys.